People in general, and knowledge workers in particular, grow according to the demands they make of themselves. They grow according to what they consider to be achievement and attainment. If they demand little of themselves, they will remain stunted. If they demand a good deal of themselves, they will grow to giant stature without any more effort than expended by non-achievers. That quote comes from one of my classics, The Effective Executive. It came out originally in 1966. It's a super text. It's been around over 50 years. A lot of the standard business, nonfiction, management stuff you read today on the top 100 lists comes back to Peter Drucker and his 4+ decades of work in the space, being an originator of the space. The quote I love from here is this: what we always do grows out of our greatest demand. Now, as you know, I've posted a lot this week about getting what's known as the dreaded call, right? The call. We're fortunate in the military that when you're told that you don't promote or you don't get an assignment, you're not immediately fired. There are those excruciating moments in the mid-90s and other times where there are reductions of force where members don't expect. But for the most part, we know when the long knives are coming, and even when the long knives come, we've got some chance or opportunity to correct our path, to correct our direction, to continue and to enjoy the success of our careers. So what happens is, in a promotion cycle, the promotion cycle is the clear assignment and selection tool that all of us in uniform grow up with, we're used to, we expect, we live with, we breathe it, we know it. We know the ins and the outs. We've heard the folklore, we've heard the horror stories, success stories, the high flyers, the water walkers, the muddy middle, firewalling, all those terms and phrases come out of this one system, come out of this one structure. And the mindset that's been shifting for me over the last few years is that it's not a demand side structure. It's a supply side structure. The idea that the military assignment and selection system, the promotion cycle, all of them merged together, have to triage proficiency in promotion. I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm not saying I'm excellent. I'm good. I'm good at what I do, and I enjoy what I do, right? But at the end of the day, it is supply-based. Congress mandates us certain numbers of members at all pay grades at all levels across the board. And we, as this component services, have to fulfill that congressional mandate. So it's always about supply. It's always about how many do I get to what position. And triaging as best as possible the proficiency pyramids, those skill peaks, with the hard and fast, here's who we know, where we have to put and where. So the shift I've made over time is I've never thought about life, career, success as a demand-driven career. But it really is. And when you think about transitioning, when you think about the paths to transition or the paths to success in uniform, it's really based on the supply of what's available in the service, but also the demands we choose to place on ourselves, the demands we want to place on ourselves. So when I was young, I learned very distinctly that the career path that leads to success at 06 in the Coast Guard is 10 years afloat, an MBA, an assignment to the Coast Guard's Office of Budget Management, Office of Resources, right? And that seems simple, but simple is far from easy. More importantly, that path should work. We're a seagoing service, somewhat. We need people in the most arduous environments and circumstances to excel, to lead the service into the future. That should work. That's a supply function. The demand function is, what do we as members want of ourselves? What do we want of our ratings? What do we want of our specialties? What do we want to see in our shadow box when that 20, 30-year window comes to an end, right? So let's be truthful, let's be honest. Every system, every personnel system has elements of unfairness in it because every system has people in it. There is no perfect system. If you read Peter Senge, The Fifth Discipline, solutions cause problems. Even Drucker talks about in The Effective Executive. Leadership is like surgery. You don't want to do what is unnecessary. And changing the perspective about what happens in that contentious, emotional, energetic, I'm almost at a loss of words, situation or environment, that moment, right, is a supply side moment, not a demand side moment. No one likes not being picked. No one likes being 6 years old, being the last to be picked for kickball. No one likes being 17 years old, not getting put into the bachelor's school, the school of their choice. No one likes to be 30 years old, pre-med, and not being able to get accepted to the med school or the internship of their choice. Where we're fortunate is when we see that, we hopefully see a path out of it. Now, honestly, it's a black box that happens at those moments. Centralized assignment and selection is something we don't get to see the insides of. It's not a transparent process. Never has been, and honestly never will be. But it's a supply side process, not a demand side process. What do we demand of ourselves? What do we demand of our work? And what do we demand of our legacy? That's always been the challenge. And the organizational, quote unquote, supply and demand is not always going to align with the personal supply and demand. If you read some of my posts recently, there's an Air Force post by an Air Force active duty 06 who's gone by the pseudonym Ned Stark. And he echoes the argument of how high potential officers in the Air Force are handpicked and selected at the first 4 years of their career, and they're pretty much shepherded all the way up to year 23, year 24, how he didn't like that system and how he was getting out. That argument caused so much of a stir in the Air Force that the Chief of Staff of the Air Force personally asked the pseudonymed colonel to join his ranks for personnel readiness and to task out what's wrong and how to better build the system. Now, again, that's a personal leader who sees a demand side issue for a supply side problem. Expand that a little bit. In 1970-ish, there was a colonel by the name of Ron Keyes who wrote the 3-page letter, "Dear Boss, I Quit." In his letter, as Captain Keyes wrote, he wrote some of the same issues that you could almost echo today in the Air Force. Captain Keyes became General Keyes and retired in 2007 as commander of the Air Combat Command out of Langley. So he chose to even write that statement, pen that perspective, stay on the inside, and make his change from the inside as a 4-star general, right? Our highest demands require time. In this example of General Keyes, he took the time to stay in and go all the way to the top. In some other examples, the choice is to spend that time elsewhere. I talk a lot about the 6 paths of transition: employment, entrepreneurship, education, estate, experience, and expression. A lot of times, we try to find the demand for those paths to align as best as we can with the uniform. Ultimately, there becomes a point where the stakes are higher than they ever have been or ever will be. And that point is when the demand we have to fulfill ourselves in those paths doesn't match what the uniform supplies for us to do. For some of us, for me and 140 of my closest friends, that is the assignment and selection process. That is the promotion cycle. We're now on the outside looking in, and odds are 80 to 90% sure that's where we'll stay until the shadow boxes call us, right? Newton's first law. Newton's first law says an object that is in motion tends to stay in motion. And these events knock us out of that motion. They are the unbalanced force that knock us out of the direct motion we've always been on. I mean, I've been in this position, in this uniform, in this service, in this mission for 21 and a half years. I was reminded of it this morning. That's more than half my life. That motion, that inertia for being on that path for that long, it itself carries a level of comfort, a level of expectation, and a level of satiety, right? But now there's different stakes. Do I allow the unbalanced force to keep me on that motion? Or do I allow the unbalanced force to become the time towards fulfilling my own personal demands in a different way, especially as now the honest question of sunsetting my career is in front of me, more so than it's ever been, more so than I talked about in Command Your Transition, about making a year 9 decision at year 11. This is it. This is the question. And this is something that the answer is going to be different for me, that's going to be different for any one of my other friends. The C.S. Lewis article, The Inner Ring, I'm not going to be in the inner ring. However, the inner ring for me is going to be something different than it is going to be for my friends who continue to choose it, to continue on in the uniform. We have the opportunity to continue on in uniform. Moreover, the questions that we have now, while the system says we don't meet the supply, those questions still have to ring out into how we choose and gear ourselves toward the greatest demand we want to bring ourselves towards.